Hello and welcome to section 9.6. Today we're looking at factoring trinomials of the type ax squared plus bx plus c. Now right now I want to forewarn you, this will probably be the hardest section. It will take a little bit of time. We have the next couple of weeks to go over this section. Okay, so please, just like before, I want you to give this an honest effort. I want you to try really hard. And we will get through this, but this is, once you get the hang of it, it's not bad. But just know that it will take some of us a little bit longer to get the hang of it than others. Please make sure that you are sending me questions, or if you have something set up and you're stuck, do not cross off or erase. You can put a light line through it if something doesn't work out, but please make sure that you show me all of your work so that I can help you out the best that I can. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started. This section can be kind of fun too. So as I mentioned before, we are looking at factoring trinomials of the type ax squared plus bx plus c. So the key difference is that we are going to have a coefficient or a number in front of our x squared term now, to whereas in the section 9.5 we did not. Now I did grab this image from your book because I think it does do a good job at showing you again where all of the pieces are coming from. So when we FOIL something out or distribute these binomials, if you recall, to get the 10x squared that we have here, we took our first term and we multiplied it by the first term of the other binomial. So that's where we get 10x squared. Then to get our next term, or the 8x, we took the outside terms, which would be the 2x times the 4. So that produces the 8x. Then to get our 15x, we took the two inside terms. And then what we did is, to get that last term there of the 12, we took the 3 and the 4, or the last two terms in each binomial, and multiplied those together. Then, if you recall, what we did is we added our two like terms that were in the middle to come up with this 23x. So essentially, once we got our 10x squared, or the first term of our trinomial, and our 12, which was the second term, those numbers don't change. But to get this middle term, we actually had to multiply the two outsides and then the two insides together and then add them up. If you can understand that, then this stuff will honestly be a piece of cake for you. And then this little image down here at the bottom, I like this because it just reminds you that when you have a trinomial in ax squared plus bx plus c form, your a value comes from multiplying the two first terms together. Your c value comes from multiplying the two last terms together. And then your b is the sum of the products in the middle here. So you take the two outside terms, add those to the product of the two inside terms. One more thing that I would like to add is, if c and b are positive, this tells us that the two factors of c are also positive. Okay, so that means that my two binomials essentially are going to both have addition signs in them. If, however, I got to switch over here. If our c is positive and your b is negative, then this tells us that both factors are negative. Now we have one more case to go, and we won't cover this until tomorrow, but the third case would be if c is negative, then the factors must be positive and negative. So you're going to have one positive and one negative. And to be honest with you, we won't get to this until the part 2 video. So with that being said, let's go ahead and start our examples. For example 1, we're looking at a case where our C value is positive. Okay, so you can see that we have a plus 7. Notice that our x squared term is no longer just x squared, but we do have a coefficient in front of it. So because I have a coefficient in front of this, I'm going to set this up a little bit different than when we had just an x squared term. I myself like to set up kind of like sample binomials. And I like to do this because it's some work that I can show and I can cross things off lightly, but still go back and double check if I need to. So I recall from the first slide that we looked at in this section that the number 6 is going to come from factors of 6, and those are going to come from the first spots of my binomials. So I know that factors of 6 are going to be 1 and 6, or I could do 2 and 3. And I'm going to skip this middle one for right now, just and I'll come back to that here. Or I'll skip this one and this one right here, and I'll come back to those here in just a second. Now, if you recall from that first slide as well, that my factors of 7 come from the last spots. So this is my first, this is my last out of the FOIL. So I know that factors of 7 are going to be 1 and 7. And then the other option that I have is I could flip these and make this 7 and 1. And the reason I will only flip the second. I will always leave the first combination the same, because if you switch both of them, sometimes you end up with the same scenario as you had and you might not realize it. So always leave the first factors, the order the same. So notice here I have a 1 and a 6 and a 1 and a 6 here, but for my second set of factors, for my last term here, that 7, I have a 1 and a 7, and then I reverse the order to make it 7 and 1. And the reason is because when I go to, what I have to do now is I have to find something that's going to give me that middle term of 23. I know that these first factors are going to give me a 6. That's why I chose those numbers. I know that these last terms are going to give me factors of 7 because that's why I chose those numbers. So now I'm trying to find the perfect combination that will get me 23. So when I go to FOIL this, if you recall, the numbers that make 23 are going to be my inside, the product of my inside numbers, and the product of my outside. So I'm going to set this up as 1 times 7 plus, then I have 1 times 6, or this gives me 7 plus 6, or a middle term of 13. So this set of factors here is not going to work. So I mean, I can cross it off if I want to. I wouldn't. You could put an X on the outside if you want to know that that one's not going to work. However you want to do it, that's fine, but please do not erase those, because sometimes you have the right factors and they're in the right order, but you make a math mistake, and I can help you out with partial credit or help you out, period, if you show me what you had for work. So now I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for this next one. So I'm going to try my outside terms, which is 1 times 1. And I'm going to add that to the product of my inside terms, which is 7 times 6. So this is going to give me 1 plus 42, which gives me 43. So in this case, this again is not going to work, and that's fine. So now I'm going to go back down and I'm going to look at factors of 6, but I'm going to use different factors of 2 and 3 now. So if I have 2 and 3, and I again go back and I look at my factors of 1 and 7, I have 1 and 7, and again I leave my first factors, so the 2's and the 3's are going to be the same in both sets, and I'm just going to switch the order of the second factors of 7 here. So I have 1 and 7 in the first set, and then I have 7 and 1 in the second set. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to look at the product of my outside term and add it to the product of my inside term. So here I have 2 times 7 plus 1 times 3, or I end up with 14 plus 3, or 17. So this still is not what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and do this one more time, and hopefully I get there. But now I'm going to go ahead and do the outside terms. So I have 2 times 1 plus the product of my inside terms, which is 7 times 3. This is going to give me 2 plus 21, which gives me 23. So this right here, these are the numbers that are going to give me the factors that I want. So I know that I'm going to have 2x, and I'm going to have a 7, and I know that I'm going to have a 3x and a 1. So now, because both of these up here are positive, that tells me that both of my binomials down here are also going to be a positive. So that's going to be a plus, and that's going to be a plus. So these here are going to be my factors of this trinomial. And don't worry, I do have a couple more examples. All right, so for my example 2, I have factors of 2x squared plus 5x plus 2. Again, I noticed that my a term has or I actually have an a term. I have a positive middle term and a positive c term. So I'm just going to set these up. And I know that factors of 2 are going to be 2 and 1. And again, I know I want to leave that order as 2 and 1. Then when I go to look at factors of my c term, which is right here, here I have factors that are going to be 2 and 1 or 1 and 2. And those are my only factors of both a and c. So this one's going to be kind of nice. So now what I have to do is I am going to go ahead and look at their products. So if I look at my outside, the product of the outside term, that gives me 2 times 1 or 2. And I'm going to add that to the product of my inside term, which is going to be 2 times 2. And here I end up with a product of 4. So as you can see, this is not anything that I want. So I'm going to have to keep going. So now I'm going to go ahead and do this again with my second set of factors. So my outside term is going to be 2 times 2, which is 4. And my inside terms are going to give me 1 times 1, which is 1. 4 plus 1 will give me 5. So this tells me now that my factors are going to be 2x plus 1 and x plus 2. And these are my factors. Now here with example 3, we have something very similar. Actually, it looks very similar to example 1. But if you notice, my middle term here is actually got a negative sign in front of it. So because I have a negative here and a positive for a positive sign right here, that tells me that in order to get a positive 7, I have to have either a positive positive or a negative negative. But because this 23 is negative, that tells me that both of my factors are going to have to be a negative. So I'm going to start out setting this up the exact same way that we have been doing all along. I know that factors of 6 are going to be 1 and 6. And I have 2 and 3. Now I do know that I have a negative, so I'm going to go ahead and put negatives in for all of these because I know that both of these have to be negative. And then for my 7 here, factors of 7 are going to be 1 and 7 or 7 and 1. And then I have 1 and 7, and I didn't finish this. So here's 2 and 3. We're subtracting. And then I also have my 7 and 1 here. So now it's just a trial and error, and I'm going to go ahead and FOIL these out real quick. So when I do that, my outside terms are going to give me a negative 7 plus the product of my inside term is a negative 6, which is a negative 13. Here I have my outside terms, which is a negative 1, plus my inside terms, which are a negative 42. So this gives me a negative 43. For this set of factors, I have 2 times a negative 7 is going to give me a negative 14, plus negative 1 times 3 is a negative 3. So here I end up with a negative 17. And for my bottom factors, I have 2 times a negative 1, which is going to give me a negative 2, plus negative 7 times a negative 3, or positive 3, sorry, is a negative 21. So this here will give me a negative 23. So for my final factors, I'm going to end up with this set right here, which is 2x minus 7 times 3x, minus 1. And these right here are my factors. The last example that we're going to cover today, okay, is example 4. Here we have 20x squared plus 80x plus 35. On this example, I picked this one specifically because one thing that I will always do before I start factoring is I try to make it easier on myself. So what I do is I always look to see, do my factor, or do my 3 terms in this case have something in common that I can factor out? So if I look at the numbers 20, 80, and 35, I notice right away that I can factor a 5 out of all of these. So I can take a 5 out of 20, which is going to give me 4x squared. 5 goes into 80 16 times, so here I have 16x, plus, and then 5 goes into 35 7 times. So notice that by taking a 5 out, I just made my trinomial that I have to factor way easier, because 7 is a prime number, so I've only got 1 and 7 and 1 as factors, and 4 has 2 and 2, or 4 and 1 as factors, to where 20, I would have 1 and 20, I'd have 2 and 10, I'd have 4 and 5. So this here is a lot bigger, and that would give me a lot more sets of factors I would have to try. So now that I've gone ahead and made this simpler on myself, I only have to factor what's inside. I'll have to continue to carry the 5 down, but I don't have to worry about having an extra 5 and all of this stuff. So let's go ahead and factor these. So I'm going to just carry my 5 down with me every time, and I'm going to set this up just like what we've been doing. So we said factors of 4 could be 1 and 4, or we could do 2 and 2. Okay, and then factors of 7, we're going to be 1 and 7, and I can flip those to 7 and 1 for both of these. And now what I'm going to do is I ignore this 5 up front for right now, and I'm only working on my binomial factors, or the stuff in the parentheses. So 1 times 7 gives me 7, plus 1 times 4, which is going to give me 11. And remember, my goal is 16 here. So I'm going to go to the next one, and I have 1 times 1 is 1, plus 7 times 4, which is 28. So this here gives me 29. So I'm going to keep going. I have 2 times 7, which is 14. And then 1 times 2 is 2. This is going to give me 16, which means that this right here is a set of factors that I want. So now when I go to write my factors, what I'm going to do is I have to keep that 5 there with this. So I really have 5 times 2x plus 7 times 2x plus 1. So my factors now are going to be the 5, the 2x plus 7, and the 2x plus 1. Please give your homework a try. Let me know if you're having issues or if you have any questions. I would be more than happy to help you. Otherwise, good luck and have a great day.